Hello po and good morning. Welcome once again to Everything Bible. And good news, tapos na po tayo sa chapter 3. And tapos na po ang ating paghihirap na matanggap ang mga pangaral po ni James sa ating mga nagkakasala sa ating bibig, which is all of us. I don't think meron po sa atin ngayon o sa inyo na nakikinig that is not guilty of the things na pag-uralan po natin sa chapter 3. So we're through with that. We're going to chapter 4. And dito na po sa chapter 4, slowly James will be transitioning to talk about worldliness. Naalala niyo po when we started this series of the book of James, we said that yung mga problema na itatakal ni James dito sa mga tao na kanyang sinusulatan is much like the problems that we have today. It's much like the problems that we're facing now. In chapter 1, we saw that meron silang trials, meron silang testings, meron silang temptation to sin. And then nakita rin natin as we have gone further, meron silang mga tendency na sisihin ng Panginoon sa kanilang sa mga nangyayari sa buhay nila. And then we talked about the tongue. Then all of these things, or the temptation to disobey the will of God, and all of these things. While I'm saying that, you would think that James might be writing to us personally. And as we read this book, syempre po, as we read that, we apply it to ourselves, we apply it to our lives, and we get the principles. Actually, it's not hard to get the principles out of this book. It's right there. It's clear. It's straightforward. It's very practical. It's very instructional. It's very authoritative. It's very, very powerful. And we just have to take it and then apply it to buhay natin. And now we're here going to chapter number 4. Hopefully we'll get through a few verses here. And the title of our episode is Selfish Desires. Ito po ay selfish desires. And we've always talked about the heart. And this is where these selfish desires come from. And before we start, I would like to ask everyone if you could, if you would want to please share our video. That will be a great blessing po sa amin and encouragement to me personally. So, going to, reading verse number 1 here in chapter 4, sabi dito, "From whence come wars and fightings among you?" This is a good thing for those of you who preach, or those of you who give advice, spiritual advice po. If you're a spiritual leader of any sort, ano po, one good thing, one good strategy when we talk to people, when we challenge them, is to ask them a question. Why? Because questions, they stir up the conscience. Because it forces people to think. It forces people to look for the answer deep inside them. And it really stirs up their conscience. And minsan, kahit na hindi mo na i-follow up pa yung question na yun, just leaving a question sa mga tao will just really do something sa kanila. Sa atin po mga nakapag-soul winning na, maganda po yung mga nag-share ng gospel, maganda po yung mga questions na yan. Yung simpleng tanong na alam natin, lahat tayo mamamatay, but pag ba tayo namatay, have you really considered kung saan pupunta ang iyong kaluluwa? And if a person is serious enough to consider that question, it will really open up his heart to listen to what else you have to say. So sabi dito ni James, there's a very important question: from whence come wars and fighting? Saan daw nanggagaling fight, yung pag-aaway, yung state of war? We saw this similar sa chapter 3. I think sinasabi ni James sa chapter 3 about strife, di ba? Hindi tayo dapat nakikipag-away, even in our words should be loving. So if we have these wars and fighting sa buhay natin, we're living a miserable life. Now James is asking us this question: from where is it coming from? Sa lahat po na napag-aralan natin from chapter 1 to chapter 3, without looking at the next verse, or without continuing to read this, you can answer that for yourself. Kaya mo na sagutin yan sa napag-aralan natin. Saan daw nanggagaling itong mga pag-aaway, envying, strife, all of this? Diba, napag-aralan natin, all of this comes from the root, which is our hearts. Diba? Ano yung source? Sabi dito, come they not hence, even of your lusts. Hindi po ito nanggagaling from any external source. Hindi po ito nanggagaling from any external influence. It comes from our hearts. And we have learned what we let into our hearts, dyan din manggagaling yung mga negative na bagay sa buhay natin. It means that a heart that is not centered on what God wants sa buhay natin will produce a person whose life is filled with strife, whose life is filled with envy, whose life is filled with all of these negative things. Kaya nga po, batayan natin ang puso natin, kung ang puso natin is only concerned on what I want, is only concerned about what I want for my life, and we're not really seeking God's wisdom or seeking for God's will, then yan po yung mangyayari sa buhay natin. Diba? Sabi dito sa, come they not hence, even if you're lust that war in your members. So all of these things, it's our lust, it's our selfish desires. It is our strong desires. Remember, we learned already about that word lust. It is our strong desires that only will gratify ourselves. So, kaya tayo namumuhay ng maraming kaguluhan, kaya tayo namumuhay ng maraming pag-aaway, kaya tayo namumuhay ng maraming pagtatalo or maraming inggit, maraming bitterness. It's because we live our lives according to what we want. According to how we want to live it. According to how we can get what we want for ourselves. Kaya nga verse number 2, sabi dito, anong klaseng buhay to? And isa sa nakakalungkot sa buhay na to, may kita natin sa verse number 2 and 3. Ye lust, and ye have not. Ye kill, and desire to have, and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lust. So, dito muna tayo sa verse number 2. Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have, and cannot obtain. Ye fight war, yet ye have not. Di ba? Simple lang. Kung nabubuhay ka, sabi ni James, in a selfish way, kung nabubuhay ka, ang purpose mo lang sa buhay na to is to work, to get what you want for yourself. Ang sinasabi sa atin ni James, that pag ganyang klase kang mamuhay, una, nakita natin sa verse 1, may miserable, maraming problema, maraming pag-aaway, at higit sa lahat, you will end up na hindi mo rin naman makukuha yung ginugusto mo para sa'yo. Why? Because the more we desire, minsan nakukuha natin yung gusto natin, selfish desires, but because our flesh is naturally mas gugustuhin pa niya, mas lalo pa siyang hihiling ng masigit pa. So eventually, you will live your life trying to get things that you want for yourself without being able to get them. And as a result, you lived a miserable life without getting what you want. Kung ganyan ka mamuhay. Kaya nga sabi niya, ye lust and have not. Ginugusto mo, hindi mo rin naman nakukuhan. You kill. Diba? Ibig sabihin nito, yung mga tao that will do everything just to get what they desire. You kill. Yan yung strong word na to. Everything to get what they desire and desire to have and cannot obtain. Bakit? Mga anak ng Panginoon na namumuhay para lamang sa gusto natin, para sa sarili natin, we cannot obtain. Hindi rin natin makukuha yan. Sabi ni James. Why? Because ye ask not. Because ye ask not. Hindi ibig sabihin na dahil hindi natin pinag-pray. Because, alam mo, meron tayong tendency ng mga tao na pag-pray yung mga bagay na hindi naman maganda para sa atin. Kadalasan sa atin, hindi tayo nagkukulang sa prayer. Pero sabi sa verse number 3, ye ask and receive not, because ye ask, it means nagpe-pray ka, but ye ask amiss. Mali yung hinihingi mo. That ye may consume it upon your lust. Diba? Imagine mo, tao ka, believer ka, namumuhay ka, meron ka ng plano sa sarili mo, meron ka ng gusto sa sarili mo, sa tingin mo, yun ang makakabuti para sa'yo. And then we go to God in prayer and ask God, Lord, bigyan mo nga sa akin to. Lord, eto nga yung gawin mo sa buhay ko. Lord, make this come to pass. So parang tinatrato natin ng Panginoon na genie in a bottle. Pinlano kong buhay ko, ito ang gusto ko magandang bahay, gusto ko magandang sasakyan, gusto ko ganito, gusto ko ganyan. And then, pagpipray ko sa Panginoon, Lord, sinulat ko na yung plano ko, ang ganda nito, approve mo na lang, gawin mo na lang. Pero sabi ng Panginoon, yes, you're asking, but you're asking for the wrong things. That's why you do not have it. Kaya nga po, we should not treat prayer as getting things that we want. In the Bible, if you read, and this is another for another topic, but since we're in this, we're talking about prayer anyway. When you talk about prayer, it's not about getting what you want. Prayer is about aligning your will with what God wants for your life. Ibig sabihin, bigyan natin ng example, kung ako, meron akong gustong-gustong bagay, sabihin na natin gustong-gusto ko itong stapler na to. Pero hindi ito ang kalooban ng Panginoon. Ang kalooban ng Panginoon ay itong oil na pangmasahe. Ito ang pagpe-pray ko sa Panginoon. Pero ang tunay na prayer is not asking God for this na hindi niya kalooban. It's asking God for me to slowly remove this from my will and desire what God wants for my life. And then He answers my prayer. So, kaya nga sabi sa Psalm chapter 37 verse 4, delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give thee the desires of thine heart. It should be our desire yung prayer should slowly change our desire into what God desires para sa ating buhay. Kaya sabi ni James, he ask amiss. Bakit? Yung inihiling mo, yung plano mo. Yung inihiling mo, yung gusto mo. Yung inihiling mo, yung selfish desires mo. Mali ang pagpe-pray mo. Hindi ka nagkukulang sa prayer, hindi ka nagkukulang sa paghingi, pero mali yung hinihingi mo. Kaya sabi ni James, slowly, well, if you're living a life that's full of selfish desires, na yun na lang ang pinagtrabahuhan mo, yun na lang ang inisip mo ng inisip, yun na lang ang pinagpray mo na pinagpray sa Panginoon, masasayang ang buhay mo, lilipas ang buhay mo na hindi mo makukuha yung ginugusto mo, at isa pa, magkakaroon ng maraming problema sa buhay mo. Anong description ng Panginoon diyan sa mga tao na describe natin? The people who live selfish lives, selfish desires, and then ask God to give them their selfish desires. Etong sabi ng Panginoon, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. We are in this world, we're living in this world, and we're wanting the things of this world for our own selves. Sabi ng Panginoon, you're an adulterer, you're an adulteress, ye adulteresses. Yan ang description ng Panginoon. Ano ba itong words ng adulterers and adulteresses? These words are talking about cheating. It means that, sabi ng Panginoon, hindi pa pwedeng anak kita at ang desire mo ay para sa sarili mo, makamunduhan na desire na para sa sarili mo. It doesn't work that way. So sabi ng Panginoon, know you not that kung yan ang gusto mo, I'm not your friend. If I'm your friend, hindi yan ang gugustuhin mo. But if I'm your father and you are my son, you're a believer, at puro kamunduhan ang gusto natin, puro selfish desires ang gusto natin, puro gusto natin yung mga bagay sa mundo, hinihiling natin sa Panginoon na ibigay sa atin, God says, eto ka. You're an adulterer, you're a friend enemy. Sabi ng Panginoon, you're a friend enemy. And nothing is worse than a friend enemy. Na kaibigan mo pag nandyan pero iba gusto. Lalo na siguro kung magulang ka. Okay yung anak mo sa'yo, pero ang gusto niya, yung mga bagay na magpapalayo sa kanya sa'yo. Shout out sa aking kapatid na si Millie Madlang Awa, Millie Rebeli Madlang Awa Rahel. 'Di ba? Nung mapapalayo ka sa iyong tatay at magulang. Ano po? So, yun Panginoon sa Panginoon. Sabi ng Panginoon, ba? Hiling ka ng hiling sa akin, pero yung mga hinihiling mo, papalayo ka naman sa akin. What we have to realize is this. God is too good to give to us what will be eventually bad for us. Masyadong mabait ang Panginoon para ibigay sa iyo yung selfish desires mo. Bakit? Kakasira mo lang. Bakit? Ikakasakit mo lang someday. Bakit? Ikakalayo mo lang sa kanyang kalooban. Ganyan kabait ang Panginoon. Kahit na gaano mo pa kapilit, hindi niya ibibigay sa iyo. Bakit? Kasi mabait siya. Kasi mahal ka niya. So God takes it seriously. God takes it personally. Sabi niya, ako ang dinadaya nyo. Ginagamit nyo ako, sabi ng Panginoon. Gusto nyo yung selfish desires nyo, mapapalayo sa akin, tapos hiling naman kayo ng hiling sa akin. No, you're asking amiss, God said. My challenge to you today is, piliin po natin to have God, or to have the wisdom of God. Lord, bigay mo po sa akin, ano ang gusto mo sa buhay ko, ano ang gusto mong i-desire ko, and help me na yan ang ipag-pray ko sa iyo, at yan din ang gustuhin ko, at yan din ang i-desire ko, para Panginoon, magkaroon ako ng life that is peaceable. Magkaroon ako ng life that is full of peace, love, and just blessings from you, Panginoon. And hopefully, meron po tayong natutunan from those verses. Tomorrow we'll continue chapter 4, and then we will have one chapter after that. Hopefully, matapos po natin in a week or so itong Book of James. So, ilan po. Maraming salamat.